Hello and welcome to Move the Line Prop Drop Show. Our normal host, Ryan Noonan, is out this week, so I will be filling in. But joining me today, as always, the Pat Mayo. Pat, how's it going, man?
I'm doing well. Only 4 games to choose the props from. Weirdly, I only needed one. I think every single one of my props besides one comes from one team in particular. And if I don't have that team figured out this week, I'm in a world for hurt.
Oh, that's bold. I feel like when I have a good read on something, I want to go all in. And I guess at this point, there's no better time to since there's only 4 teams. But it definitely makes me nervous, kind of putting all my eggs in one basket. Because, like you said, if you don't have it figured out, like it can definitely hurt you. But speaking of like last week, your Hayden Hurst analysis led me to betting on his over on his receptions. And I don't even know if you played that or if it was an official look, but you started talking about it, led me to that. And I mean, I think that cashed in like the first half. So, shout out to you on that.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I think I hit everything last week except for Josh Allen rushing attempts, which we got hooked on. And he had 3 rushes called back with holding penalty. So that's never any fun. But you led me because I was going to go with ETN under rushing attempts, and then you sold me on Barkley. So I just parlayed those two together. It was a great week as a game of props.
It was awesome. It was a very good week for us as well. And the attempts prop, it was interesting because both of like the heavy underdogs who's had like really high attempts, like 15.5, both of them went well under because the underdogs predictably lost and they couldn't run the ball when they were losing. So made a lot of sense. Also, JaMychal Hasty played a lot last week. That was a little weird though. Played a little bit more than normal. Before we dive in today, though, I just want to let the viewers know if you like what you hear on here, you can find all of our player prop bets or my player prop bets and Noonan's in the betting subscription at 44.com. Just $19 through the Super Bowl. Includes all of our tools. This is subscriber Discord and all of our bets. So anyways, let's dive into our favorite props of the week. Pat, I'll let you go first here with what I assume will be all from one team here.
Yeah, Eagles. So I had a very good read on the Eagles last week, and let's hope I have a very good read on the Eagles this week. So I'm going to start in that rushing attempts market. Thank God it got adjusted because the juice was getting a bit high on Miles Sanders under rushing attempts. It was 14.5 minus 160. Now at DraftKings Sportsbook, it's 13.5 under minus 110. So I like that much more. I haven't projected at around 10 rushing attempts. And here's the thing. Philadelphia is not stupid. They're one of the smarter teams going. As we saw last week, Dallas, not one of the smarter teams going. Are they going to run the ball into the teeth of the best run defense in football? I don't think so. And especially when you take a look at how this backfield breaks down, and it's not that I expect Boston Scott to get 10 carries or Gainwell to repeat what he did last week, but you still have a 3-headed backfield. Even if Boston Scott's getting 3-4 carries in a game and Gainwell is getting 6-7, which is definitely in the realm of outcomes and probably on the majority side of what is likely in this game, Miles Sanders is going to play like at most 50% of the running back snaps in a game where I doubt they want to run the ball, but they probably know that's not the best idea in the world. And then you still have to factor in what if they're just Jalen Hurts designed runs in this game, which is probably going to be far more effective. Miles Sanders is the type of running back who can make one cut and get 60 yards down the field. So I'm not playing this as a rushing yards under prop. I'm playing as a rushing attempts under prop. And hopefully that logic doesn't backfire on me. It doesn't go the other way where he has like 18 attempts for 32 yards or something like that. But I really like the under 13.5 rushing attempts.
I absolutely agree. I actually did play the under on the rushing yards. I did play the under on the rushing attempts too. It opened at one point in one sportsbook at 15.5 at, it was minus 130, but still I was like, this is insanity. So I did play the under on the rushing yards. That was at 57.5. So obviously I can't release that here. It's like 49.5 some spots. I think that's still fine, but I'd much prefer the attempts at that point than the yardage. San Francisco has allowed one running back to clear 60 yards all season, which is, shocking. It's pretty impressive. And I believe it was Josh Jacobs, and he had like 20 carries or something like that. So, it took like insane volume to get there. As you mentioned, Miles Sanders will not get there. And you brought one up that it's actually my first play, Jalen Hurts rushing over. I like that a lot. We're looking at 46.5, depending on the book, 47.5. The Niners have, with DeMeco Ryans, their defensive coordinator, have kind of struggled against truly mobile quarterbacks. They didn't get to play against Kyler Murray this year, but if we look at who they played this year specifically, they allowed 50 yards on just 6 carries to Marcus Mariota earlier. And if we look at last year, they allowed 10 carries, 82 yards to Jalen Hurts himself, and then 100 yards to Justin Fields. So those are really the only 3 quarterbacks in that sample that we have. I know it's a small sample, but I think it is notable there specifically. And he ran 9 times for 34 yards last week in a game that literally was over at halftime. It was 28-0. There's no reason for him to run or anything. And he fits kind of that study that we talked about. We've talked about relentlessly on the show. A quarterback who averages 30 yards in the regular season, averages an extra 6 yards per game in the playoffs there. And I think that this line is just a little bit too short given that. And beyond that, I think they're going to run some even more designed runs on the third and short, because if we look at this Niners team, they have a little bit of a weakness. So the 49ers defense on third down and short, overall on third down, they're 15th. They have a lot of 39% conversion rate. On third and less than 5, they're 31st in the league, allowing a 68% conversion rate. And third and 5 plus, they're third in the league at 29%. So to me, I mean, that screams that the Eagles, who are third in converting third and short, like with designed runs, with that stupid QB sneak that they do with pushing the ball.
I love that.
Oh, it's amazing. So I think that this is a good look. I know the attempts open to like 9.5. Would have loved to get that too. But any thoughts on Jalen Hurts here?
Yeah, I love Jalen Hurts. I was looking at the 9.5 rushing attempts. I think that goes over too. But what am I going to get it at right now? Yards for Hurts. I mean, you could even play it as a part of a ladder if you really wanted to, as in terms of a milestone, but just the straight up rushing prop. Yeah, I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's 47.5. You could probably find it like a yard lower, like yard higher, depending on what it was. But I'm throwing together a same game parlay here. Don't worry about that.
Love it. Love it. I mean, we need to. Did you place any last week? I know 2 weeks you were pretty cold, but did you rip any last week during the show, or were they golf ones?
I played some golf ones last week, but the ones I actually played last week, I told you I played. It wasn't necessarily the same game parlay. It was parlaying the props from the different games.
Yeah.
If Allen had gotten the one more rushing attempt, it would have been a pure sweep across the board, and even hitting like the 7 prop parlay that I played, which would have been fantastic news. But there was a whole bunch of really good ones. But I think this Eagles game is where I want to go, because it's really the only side this week that at least I like to think that I have figured out. Everything else just seems like, who knows?
Yeah. And I mean, I guess if we can take a step back, like, what do you think? Overall, like your macro view on that game, like, do you think that the Eagles win here? 2.5 point favorites, like 46.5 point total? Because personally, I don't know. I think that there's holes to be poked in both sides, but I do agree that there's some level of consistency for this Eagles team.
Yeah, I think that the Eagles win. They probably win by like 7. They could win by more than that. I'm open to being wrong about that. It's not like I'm including the Philly money line in a lot of this stuff. But it's funny, even with the props that I'm building, they seem to work both in the Eagles win and Eagles lose script. And that's what I like about it.
Yeah, I think that's important, because I think there is a pretty wide range of outcomes here for both sides. But we can get into your second prop if you want to.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts, anytime touchdown. To kind of piggyback on where you're going with this, you're not going to find anything close to even money generally outside of really reaching. You're going to be paying -115, -120, whatever it may be, as it pertains to any sort of Jalen Hurts props. But if you go to the touchdown market, I mean, he has 14 rushing touchdowns this year. He's +110 to score. And as you pointed out, with the way that this D'Amico Ryans defense is set up, like, he's going to be able to get loose. And if he does that around the goal line, or they run that super sneak, it seems pretty unbeatable at this point. So if they just get themselves within the 5-yard line, which you would expect that they can do, I think he scores on the ground.
Yeah, I don't know what a same game parlay of like 50 plus and a touchdown is, but I think that that's a good look, because that also adds in the factor of like maybe a longer rushing touchdown. I mean, if he gets like breaks a long one, it's definitely possible for him. But like you said, the usage in the goal line, I think, is going to be great. I don't really envision them just like they sometimes would run up the middle, in the goal line, like right when they get up there, because they can bully most teams in the trenches. Like, they have one of the best or the best offensive lines in the league. But this Niners team also is one of the best run defenses. So specifically to running backs, I think it was allowing 3.29 yards per carry at this point to opposing running backs. So super stiff there. I think we're in pretty much agreement about how we expect Hurts usage and Miles Sanders usage to go. I'm going to go to the other game for my second prop with Samaje Perine. I'm going to go with over 2.5 receptions at this point at plus money. We played it at 13.5 receiving yards. That's all the way climbed up to 16.5 at this point. I still lean over there, but if we go through the past 4 games with the Bengals offensive line starting to get injured more, Perine has run 18, 19, 19, and 21 routes, more than Joe Mixon in 3 of the 4 games. The past 2 weeks, Joe Mixon's only run a combined 22 routes. Last week, we saw Samaje Perine targeted 5 times in 1 game. And since they started losing their offensive lineman, Joe Burrow has actually targeted the running back position on 19.6% of his passes. And that was actually in a tough matchup against a Buffalo team who was like top 3 in defending the running back, allowing 30 yards per game. Now they play Kansas City, who should get a little bit more pressure than Buffalo. and is 28th in DVOA against the running back position, allowing 46 receiving yards per game to opposing running backs. So I think that you're going to see Joe Burrow still need to get the ball out quick. He's running a bunch of routes, and he's a much easier matchup where it seems like the linebackers are not be able to cover him as much. So you're able to get this at plus money pretty widely. I think that at this point, with the receiving yards shooting up to 16.5, that's probably how I'd play it. But I mean, either way, if he's getting 3 catches, I mean, he's probably going to get 16, 17 yards at least.
If you project him for 3 catches, why wouldn't you play the over 2.5 receptions at plus 100?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's good. And I think you could ladder it. I mean, he had 5 last week on 5 targets. I think maybe, I mean, that was probably one of the ceiling outcomes, but still, like if they fall behind at all, they're going to keep passing a bunch, even if they didn't. I mean, they were winning the entire game and he still had 5 receptions. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting spot to keep tailing Samaje Perine because the market still loves Joe Mixon. And I think that it's fine, but if we look at the routes run, like they're basically running the same amount of routes.
They are, and like my numbers support all of that. I think his medium projection comes out at 23 receiving yards, so I'm on board with that.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, maybe so at this point, you're probably thinking the 2.5 at even is probably better than the 16.5 receiving yards, I'd guess, right?
I think it depends on your risk tolerance, to tell you the truth, because it might just take 1 catch for him to get there on the receiving yards, but he could end up with like 4 for 5 at the same time too. So it really depends on. I like the idea of receptions more because I think that targets are generally a bit more predictable than how much the actual receiving yardage is, especially coming out of the backfield. Like when you look at running back receiving games, it can be all over the map in terms of yards per catch. It all just depends on one block or one right scheme or when in the game they actually get the reception. If it's in a 2-minute drill where, they need to go 40 yards to get into field goal range, like the defense is going to give you that yardage to stay in the middle of the field. So he might get there all on that one go. I just think, as you mentioned, with the amount of routes run that you're seeing as almost an even split between Mixon and Perine, then all of a sudden, if you can kind of pencil in 4 targets, if he gets to 4 targets, he's probably going to get 3 receptions.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a good look there. And what I started doing, people have actually asked us this in the Discord, is like, oh, when you're deciding between receptions and receiving yards, I don't think it's a bad idea to actually do like a half unit on both rather than putting it all on one, especially if you're really torn. Like I think that, in this spot, maybe you probably take the plus money, maybe that's a better look. But like if you're really torn, put a half unit on each, because most likely if he's catching 3 balls, he's probably gonna have 20 yards anyways. But if you for some reason he does have 4 catches for 5 yards, you're splitting the difference there, and you're not kicking yourself for playing the yardage over instead. So that's an interesting one that I thought could work for at least that game specifically. But let's go to your third here. I don't know if you're going back to the Eagles again here.
I'm not. I'm actually going to stay with the Bengals. And something
Okay.
I've noticed with the Chiefs defense, they don't really cover slot receivers ever. So
Yeah.
I know it's not fun to take Tyler Boyd based on the unders that he has been posting recently and Hayden Hurst getting back more involved. But I do think this is the week to go back at him. His receiving total is now at 33.5. It's 32 in some places, which I've seen. I like the over on that. This feels like a 4 for 45 type day for Tyler Boyd.
That's interesting. It's not actually someone that I've even looked at really, like just because Boyd has like basically been like an under or nothing guy for me for so long. But I totally get it. What are the receptions at, like 3.5, something like that at this point?
3.5 plus 125 to the over.
That's interesting because I do think that, like I kind of introed here, that the Bengals are going to have to get the ball out quick. Frank Clark and the Chiefs defense 6th in pressure rate. The Bills last week, that was the biggest story. I mean, the Bills defensive line was dominated by the Bengals, who were, without 3 of their starters, which is shocking. I mean, that was one of the most surprising things I've seen in a while. And the Bills without Von Miller, 19th in pressure rate, and looked like they couldn't get any pressure at all on Joe Burrow. So this one, I expect the Chiefs to get a little bit more pressure, probably force them to get the ball out quick to like Perine, to Boyd, to Hurst, and probably Chase still. Higgins might be the odd man left out again here. I don't know. I mean, if you played any Higgins action, but his props have been dropping to, we're in the 50s now at this point. Like he was once a guy where it was like mid to high 60s. For a good chunk of the year, but he hasn't really been seeing any work as of late.
I am undecided on what to do with T. Higgins. I think the move might just be play anytime touchdown with him.
Yeah. I think he's probably like an interesting, I don't know, contrarian DFS play. I mean, I don't know what his ownership will be, but like I would assume that he'll probably won't have a ton because he just hasn't been used, and he could certainly pop off. It's just not, it seems like they're shifting away from him for some reason.
It might just be matchup based. I don't know. It seems like anytime that they give the ball to Jamar Chase, now that he is healthy and since he's returned, he just makes big things happen every time he touches the ball. And they're like, well, it's low risk. He's standing 5 feet in front of me. I'll just flip it to him and he'll do the rest. Higgins isn't really that guy. And I just think that Boyd will find himself open in the middle of the field a lot this week.
Yeah, no, I like that for sure. That's an interesting one. And just a reminder to you guys, if you guys have any questions about any props or anything you want answered, I see a bunch of you in the chat already talking about some, but we will get to those after we're done with our main prop. So my third one here, this is tough because Mahomes' status has been all over the place this week. You know, the line opened up with the Chiefs being favored by 1.5 and then swung all the way at one point to the Bengals -2.5, with people really concerned about his high ankle sprain. We saw the video of Mahomes jogging around, walking out of the press conference. You know, all the cameras were zoomed in on his ankle. He looked good. I'm sure they shot him up with a ton of drugs before that, so that way he would look good. But I mean, he looks good. All the reports are that he's going to be good. So I played this a little bit early, but I still think it's fine. I played Marquez-Valdes Scantling under. I played it at 30. I think it's a 27.5 here. I still think it's fine. Beyond Mahomes, kind of like, I guess there's some general concern about whether he'll be able to his mobility. And I think part of that is driving with his feet. If you go back and watch the tape in the second half last week, I mean, he had 4 to 5 like legitimately horrible throws. He wasn't able to, like, he was like throwing behind guys, throwing over them. And he obviously, his stats ended up being good. And he ended up having like a decent day because Kelsey's awesome. Kadarius Toney's awesome. Juju did a good job on a route here and there. So I think that the offense as a whole might be fine, but MVS, I mean, hovering around a 50% snap rate, has under 30 receiving yards in 6 straight games, been right around that 27, 28 mark. But here in this spot, I mean, I have a little bit of concerns about how Kansas City matches up against this Bengals team that has done a pretty good job defending them, and I think plays them, a little bit differently this week. So I lean towards the under on MVS, even though I know it's scary. It's like a one bomb kind of thing here for MVS.
What was the number?
27.5.
27.5. All right. He has beat that number once since they last played the Bengals when he had 6 for 71.
Yeah. And that was like literally that was the one catch that he had. And at this point now, like now we're looking at this offense, like Jerick McKinnon's integrated, Kadarius Toney's more integrated. You figure that Juju will continue seeing work, Kelsey is seeing work. So yeah. And like if you think too that like Mahomes doesn't have the mobility, you're looking at less time to scramble a little bit. I think at the very least, he's not gonna be able to be like 100% Mahomes. Like he won't be scrambling around, running in circles, like, chucking up bombs occasionally. So yeah, I think that that's an interesting look. Again, it's scary. It's a one play thing, can sink you, but I think in a median outcome here, more games than not, he's not going to get the 30 yards.
I would tend to agree with you on that. My fourth play at this point needs to be more of a same game parlay piece, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's been juiced to the 9s right now. But Miles Sanders under 1.5 receptions. I don't know where they were setting the line with this. And I wish I was more proactive when it came to looking at the props when they were released this week. But this one seems outrageous. The last time he had more than a catch in a game, had 2 catches against Tennessee on December 4th. He had 3 the week before that, then 1-0-0-0-1. I mean, he's writing binary code with the amount of receptions he's getting every single week. Watch this be the week, but I don't know, man. Like this has an under hit rate of like 85%.
Yeah, what is the juice on that at this point? I know you said it needs to be in a same game parlay, but I mean, what is like -150, -200, something like that?
It's more than that now. It is, let's see, -195 on DraftKings, which is accurate based on what we've seen from these teams and what we've seen from his output. That's where it should be. Like the line should be a half reception. That's why it's kind of so outrageous. And to look at it on a different site right now, where are we at here? Receptions, Miles Sanders, -175 on the under. So at least a better price. I just played that in the same game parlay with Sanders under rushing attempts, Sanders under receptions, Hurts over rushing yards, Hurts anytime touchdown. That pays 9-1. So you can kind of use it as a piece to prop up what you want to do this week if that's the way that you want to go. Like even to play it with other things, if we just keep that in there as whatever prop that we want to go to, and you just try to look at the rest of it. If we go to rushing props, let's say rushing props for the week, how you put it with the Jalen Hurts over 9.5 +165, put it with the Miles Sanders under rushing yards or rushing attempts for Miles Sanders, you're up to +175. That's not bad. Like 2 things I really don't think are going to happen. It's
Mhm.
only two of them together, plus 175. That's not bad. You can put it with Jalen Hurts over 47.5 rushing yards, and all of a sudden you get 2-1 on your money. So that one just seems so good. Watch it lose, but you can find different juices at different places.
No, I love that. Also, on top of that, San Francisco right now, by far the best team at defending running backs in the league at pass catching. It's like if you look at their DVOA, like they are negative 47.9%, which is good in DVOA. The next closest is negative 22%. And like the rest of the league is like 14, 10, like in that range. So only allowing what is it, 30 yards per game, like really just not allowing that much to running back. So I think that that's a great look here for sure.
You can also play the, I guess it only gets up to minus, they just do the Miles Sanders under. You can go under 1.5 receptions, under 14.5 rushing attempts, and under 60.5 total yards. 3-1.
Wow. I like it. I mean, I think that's actually a great way to do it because you're just buying all the unders on Miles Sanders. And I think that, I mean, I was big on the overs last week and he got there obviously, but I think this is just a great spot because the Eagles, like you said, are one of those predictable teams that against the Titans, great run defense, pass defense is significantly worse. They went pass heavy. I mean, Miles Sanders had 10 carries for 23 yards or whatever it was. And then now this week, Niners run defense is elite. Their pass defense is significantly better than the Titans, but it's certainly their weak spot if we're going to point to one thing there. So I think that's a great point. I like that same game parlay a lot in that look.
I played a similar one as my best bet in the Super Bowl last year, all pertaining to Cam Akers. It was under rushing attempts, under rushing yards, under receptions, and it wasn't even close. Like it was just clean sweep right away. The only thing that was worrisome was the attempts, because as you may recall, in the first half, all the Rams did was run for negative yardage with Cam Akers on every first down.
Oh yeah, that was such a strange prop. That opened to like 60 rushing yards, and I was like, this is way too high. Like this is like outrageous. And I saw some people play the over too. Even I was like, I'm not worried. Like this is not going to happen. Like they're not going to be able to run the ball. And lo and behold, they did not. It makes sense.
It's funny looking at it too, because I mean, we've talked about how great the 49ers run defense is. The Eagles run defense is equally almost as elite on the ground when it comes to shutting down running backs. Like I look at my projection for Christian McCaffrey, it's 62. Seems kind of high.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So that market actually opened up. Like Christian McCaffrey's prop opened to like 63, 64. It's down to like 57, 55. Like, I mean, this is the lowest Christian McCaffrey rushing prop that we've gotten ever, basically, since he like joined the Niners. So I think the market agrees with you that like it's not going to be necessarily, easy sledding. Because their run defense has been playing a lot better as of late. I still think that might be their weakness relative to their pass defense because I think their defense overall is good, but how successful they are. McCaffrey also banged up, like was dealing with an injury last week in the second half, is obviously going to play, but didn't practice all week. So I don't know. I think for me, it's a stay away. If he was healthy, I would consider it, but I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth on that game a lot for sure.
Yeah, I like the under on McCaffrey, but I don't think I'm going to play it.
Love it. My last one here, Brandon Aiyuk. I took the under on 3.5 receptions. So since Purdy took over, Aiyuk has had like plenty of success, but a lot of that came in either like easy matchups or without Deebo Samuel. In the 5 games with Purdy and without Deebo, Aiyuk has 2, 3, 4, 2, and 5. In the two games he went over 3.5 receptions were against Miami and Arizona, who ranked 21st and 25th in pass defense DVOA. Eagles especially strong on the outside with James Bradbury, Darius Slay, and I think they'll draw Aiyuk on the majority of the routes. He's ran a route on the slot here just 16% of the time over the past 3 weeks without Deebo. So or over the past 3 weeks with Deebo. And on top of this, I think that the 49ers could, try and go run heavy here, at least to start, as long as the game is close. Because I can't say necessarily what exactly they're going to do, but they have just so many weapons now with McCaffrey, with Deebo, and with Aiyuk and Kittle. Like it's tough if they're not going to be throwing the ball 35 plus times a game to pencil in Aiyuk for 4 to 5 receptions here. So also another factor on top of this, friend of the show Steve Boyden mentioned that the Eagles now have 2 members of their staff that were also on the staff at Iowa State with Brock Purdy when he was quarterback there. So I don't know. I don't think that it's necessarily a massive factor, but I do think that like every player in every sport has like small tells and like, little things that they do, little quirks that, maybe weaknesses that they've seen that I think could give a little bit of an edge there. I don't know what it's going to be or how it's going to plan out. But I'm sure that they have some little bits of inside info here that, could twist Purdy the wrong way.
Okay. Seems
Maybe.
like a stretch.
Of course, but you never know. I mean, there's some familiarity factor, like you never played against like some of your old teammates like on any sport, and they're like, they just like know you. It's one of those things. But I guess they're not out there, so it doesn't matter. Let's see here. What else we got? We'll get to some questions here. We got Brian Sullivan. Thoughts on Debo rushing when it comes up? Shanny likes to ride him in big games. So that is up right now. We're looking at it opened at 17.5 rushing yards. I think we're looking at 20.5 rushing yards. Pat, any thoughts on Debo rushing? Not really.
And it's just such a crapshoot prop. I mean, all props are relatively crapshoot, but that one it's hard to project because it's all based on rushing attempts, which seem to have no rhyme or reason to them.
Yeah, the issue with Debo too is like if they want it to be a Debo game, he'll have 6-7 carries and go way over this number. If they don't want it to be a Debo game, then he'll have like 2, and it'll just be Elijah Mitchell and CMC.
I think logically, if you want to talk yourself into it, it's very easy. Christian McCaffrey is banged up. Eli Mitchell's banged up. Give the ball to Debo. Easy stuff.
Right. Yeah. Simple as that. Yeah. So I do think that, yeah, I think it's fine. I don't know. Again, like you said, it's kind of a crapshoot. Daniel, who asked, who are we pairing the Joe Burrow free square on Prize Picks with? I think we gave you a bunch of options here. Probably my favorite look is anything Samaje Perine related. Pat, what's your favorite look to pair with him on? I guess just anything.
They actually had the Miles Sanders one in there. The problem with the free square is like I didn't use it in my big money entry because I think you can only wager up to like 20 or $25 on it, but I would say less than 13.5 rushing attempts would be my favorite one, unless they actually have that Miles Sanders reception one in there. I'm going to check right now to see if they have it. I don't think that they do.
Probably not.
They aren't stupid enough to post a 1.5 up on that one. So yeah, the under 14.5 rushing attempts. Let me see if that number still exists first. It doesn't. It's off the board.
So. Man,
good thing I locked that one in.
Yeah, I always struggle with these free squares because, like taking the 2-pick free square nets me like whatever, like $50. Yeah, so like it doesn't move the needle for me,
If you're gonna do it, just play the 6 play for 30 times your money or whatever. It's a $20 free roll basically with a free square in it.
Right. So yeah, that's what I go back and forth. It's like, oh, I can get like basically one pick for like plus 200 or whatever it is, with the free square, but that like I just don't care about $25 enough to win that. I'd rather just play the big one, like you said, the 6-leg one. Let's see here. It looks like Young and Fearless mentioned the Miles Sanders rushing prop under 13.5 plus 102 on Canby shops. That's a good look there. Plus money.
Where is it?
Canby. So like Bet Rivers, Barstool, things like that. That's what he mentioned there. I did not double check, but I think that probably
that's amazing.
Right. Yeah, that's a good look there. Shout out Young and Fearless 22. Daniel again, Perine overs are my favorite right now. Last week he ran a route on 49% of dropbacks, not including pass blocking snaps. Mixon was in the 30s. Nice. Yeah, I think we all agree there. Fire Sports. We got an oppo here. Hurts under 47.5 rushing yards. Fire Sports, not going to go with that. AJ Brown, though, this is an interesting one. I've seen a lot of people talk about that. Any thoughts on AJ Brown? Because there's the narrative coming off last week where he was like, oh, like I didn't get the ball enough, but he was like injured and didn't play like half the game. So that was just strange. And now he's a pretty good matchup, I think, against the Niners in some senses where they do allow big plays like 21st in explosive pass rate. I mean, otherwise like an incredibly stout defense. Any thoughts on AJ, or is it just a little bit too high of a number?
It's gotten too high. I actually gave out the prop earlier in the week as one of my favorite plays, and it was 67.5 receiving yards. So I did bet the over on the 67.5 earlier in the week. 70.5. I mean, I like the number as well. I do think that he goes over this. I would expect Ward to be on Devonta Smith because they have to throw their bigger body on AJ Brown. So even if Ward does get matched up with Brown, just jump all city for him all day. I think you can get behind this defense. And I don't think that they have anyone realistically that can match up with him as long as they throw the ball high.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of do think that they go like a little bit pass heavier here, just in general. We've talked about this. So, if that kind of all goes together, I was looking at that 4.5 receptions, but I don't really want to play minus 150 or minus 160 on an over, like on an under. I think it's one thing, like you said, like Miles Sanders, like he's like literally just 85% of the time not hitting that. And so I think that that's like a great look on the under, but for an over, it's not something that I particularly love to do. Again, probably just could be a better same game parlay option if you want to throw it in there, because I do like the over 4.5 receptions a lot, especially if they have to get the ball out quick. Yeah, plus money on the offshore as well for Miles Sanders. Nice. And Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's wise. Like that. Awesome. Well, I think that was all of our questions here. Let's run through a couple of other props I guess we didn't get to. I think we got to most of them here, but I think the other ones that I was curious about would be like any thoughts on George Kittle? I mean, I go back and forth. He had some incredible games. Nothing on there yet. He has amazing games with Purdy, but then those were all without Debo. And as soon as Debo came back, like he hasn't had really a good game with him besides outside like the bobble catch, which was, I mean, George Kittle's awesome, but you can't bank on that every week. So, and then other than that, we talked about Debo, Devonta Smith. His props are getting a little bit out of control here. I mean, Devonta Smith was like the clear 1B for a while, at least in the prop market. And now since like recently, he's been crushing it. But I'm a little bit worried to keep buying into overs with Devonta because of, just what we've seen earlier. Any thoughts on Devonta, or kind of just an AJ Brown or nothing for you?
It's an AJ Brown or nothing, because I do it's not that I fear Ward. It's just I think that he gets matched up on Devonta Smith. I would take the under on him.
Okay. Yeah, because I think we were seeing his props at like 5.5 receptions, and then it was in the high 60s for a while. Yeah, 66 receiving yards. That's tough for me. That's just a little bit too much. And then the last Eagles prop that we didn't really talk about, Dallas Goedert. I feel like it's just I don't ever know what to do with him. Kind of like Kittle, he's in that range where sure, if they want to make it a point to target him, then they will, and you'll win your prop. But it seems like we just don't really have a good gauge of whether that happens or not. One prop that I was looking at was like Quez Watkins unders, maybe. I know that it's super thin, but like with Goddard in the lineup, he just really hasn't been seeing that much work. And then he played, a lot less last week even. So I don't know. I mean, Quez is a guy that, he's just really, he's thin. Like it's like a 19.5 yard prop, 1.5 receptions. So I guess it depends on what kind of sweat you're looking for, because that's not for everyone. Losing on one play or two plays is not fun.
I have Quez Watkins hitting his under on 15.5 receiving yards 63% of the time, for what it's worth.
Wow. Yeah, I mean.
So, I can throw this into my tool here. Just give me one sec. Prop tool. Quez Watkins. What was the juice on it?
Let's see here. It's minus 120 if you find the right spot here.
For the under?
Yeah. Minus 130 at DK, but
So
minus 120 others.
We'll call it minus 125 and split the difference. All that. Minus 105 receiving yards. And you said was it 15 or 16.5?
15.5.
15.5. Let's see here. Boop. Calculate. See if this is a good bet. It does give the under a positive Kelly criterion bet, because the odds, the implied odds are 55.6% at minus 125, and the actual odds of it hitting are 57%. So it says slight lean. It's a good bet, not a great bet.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's a solid lean there. And then to wrap us up here, Cool House has a little same game parlay. Brown 5+ receptions, Hurts 25+ pass attempts, total under 56.5. It is plus 140 on DK. Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you why you're wrong. I think it's a good look, but I hate betting alternate total unders or alternate total overs, because that's where like totals are super volatile. Like it's one of those things that they tell you not to tease totals, and that's the reason why. Like people could tease like sides. Like this week, there's two great Wong teasers. You can tease basically. I think at this point, Cincy and San Francisco, you can tease both above the 7. But that's because there's a really tight range of outcomes generally for sides. Totals are like all over the place. So
I just ran, by the way, through my system of whether it's a good bet or not, of the under 1.5 receptions on Miles Sanders at a juice of minus 170, and it's still telling me that it's a fantastic bet.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I think that's a good look, because it'll be, I put these props in, and then later in the week, I'll throw in some same game parlays with, like getting just things that I'm more confident in, like juiced up, or like having more action in that, because there's nothing worse than saying, oh, well, I knew that and I was right, but I just didn't put enough on it, so I think having like alternates, like same game parlays with like, Brown 7 receptions, or Sanders, you can play alternate unders, like under 40 yards, under 35 rushing yards, something like that, because I think that's very much in the range of outcomes. So getting exposure that way, plus maybe some under receptions is a good look. So awesome. Well, I think that is it for us today. Shorter show without Move the Line. Pat, tell the people where they could find you if they don't know already.
Mayo Media Network on the YouTubes, where you can find all of the episodes of the Pat Mayo Experience in video version. You want audio version, just type that into Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and you will be good to go. See you in 2 weeks.
Love it. See you soon, Pat. Guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. For Pat, I'm Connor. See you guys soon for our Super Bowl prop show coming up.